Let's talk about the Hatton Garden Job.
Shall we? It doesn't seem that long ago it actually happened.
2 years.
Okay.
Back in 2015, there was a burglary at a safe deposit facility in London's Hatton Garden, which is the diamond district in the city. And it kind of caught the public imagination for a few reasons. One of them was that I think it was the most lucrative burglary in UK history. 14 million worth of cash and jewels were stolen from these safe deposit boxes. It was certainly an audacious burglary. And the other one was the unusually advanced years of the culprits. I think the gang, they were generally in their 60s or older. They had a combined age, apparently, of 448.
It's like a usual Friday in here.
So when this news story broke, there was a lot of discussion at the time that, yes, this would be a great premise for a caper film in the style of the Guy Ritchie turn of the millennium, lock, stock, snatch stuff.
Saying the word caper scares me.
Right, it should.
Okay.
Now, I remember that era, the early noughties. And I was a student at the time and would troop along, funnily enough, to the St Andrews Picture House, same as your new Picture House on Market Street.
Yeah.
And would sit through whatever the British Film Industry had come up with that week. And there was a lot of bad copycat stuff, films like Rancid Aluminium. I mean, who calls a film Rancid Aluminium?
Rancid Aluminium.
And Love, Honour and Obey. And what was amazing was this was, Snatch came out in early 2000. This was late 2000. So in the course of a year, less than a year, this entire genre had soured beyond recognition and had become useless. Now, Ronnie Thompson, who wrote and directed The Hatton Garden Job, he co-directed a film called Tower Block a few years ago. The aim behind it seems to have been, they've sat down and said, we have to make this film as much like early Guy Ritchie and specifically Snatch as possible, and just in the most pedestrian and obvious way. So you have the gang themselves, who are played by Phil Daniels, Larry Lamb, David Calder and Clive Russell. But before introducing them, Matthew Good comes on, who's their younger, sexier handler. And he starts monologuing about diamonds, they're not just a girl's best friend, all this kind of stuff. Very sub-Guy Ritchie monologuing at the very start. Then it moves into this theme tune intro where you have this bouncy little bass line going along, these unflattering freeze frame zooms on the main cast members' faces. And it's just, transplanting something that worked beautifully in Snatch 17 years ago onto a film that's being made now. And there's got, you've got the non-diegetic bullet ricochet sound effects, cash registers ringing in the background, all this kind of pew, 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 when people start talking, spaghetti western guitars clanging. So it's like they've gone through the Guy Ritchie trick box and seasoned this story with what's there, regardless of whether it suits it or not. We've actually got, this kind of Ritchie-esque wordplay. Here's a clip in which Matthew Good starts to sell the idea of the heist to his would-be collaborators. And you can, it's there.
Hello, my son. So, you're missing D-Wing.
Hardly. Well, it was more interesting than I thought, though.
Don't tell me. You have a job lined up.
Big one.
I've heard it all before. Everyone who goes inside always meets someone who promises the earth. 99.9% of it is utter
Trust me, this is the point one. Am I the bloke who gets taken down by
And you thought of an old git like me.
top of my list?
Top of the pops, eh? I'm flattered.
I wouldn't be, it was a pretty short list. NCT?
Yeah.
Not cheap.
It's quite out of breath, isn't it? I just want Phil Daniels to sort of jump into the confidence, the preference for the habitual, you know what I mean, cranking at park life sort of thing.
That's the thing. All of this is so specifically yoked to this time in British culture, which is not even particularly fashionable anymore. I mean, look, I will go to bat for Lock, Stock and Snatch still. I think they are stylishly shot, very tightly edited, very entertaining films. They just, they've fallen out of style, largely because of what happened to the genre after they were done. And you can see actually Guy Ritchie himself walked away from that kind of film till I think he sort of needed to write his career after a couple of total disasters with Rock and Roller. So he kind of went back to it a little bit just as a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
But he kind of did it and moved on. And to an extent, the British film industry at the time didn't, because they saw it could be potentially lucrative and it felt kind of stylish and fashionable. I will go to bat for those films. I will absolutely not go to bat for this, because they've not reflected on what it is they're doing and how this story is really going to adapt to cinema treatment. Now, you've got a heist here, most of which takes place in a basement, in a corridor, with 6 men watching a drill, or 5 men watching a drill, rather. Now, that's not in any sense cinematic. You have to somehow dress that up, develop it, put new things into that to make it exciting. The film just manifestly fails to do that. what you're watching is literally boring. It's a drill boring a hole through a wall. Boring, 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 boring. And boring, boring, boring is what it is. There's this other attempt to dress it up with some kind of topicality. Matthew Good's character talks about how he, rather than robbing banks, he robs bankers now. So, we're getting revenge on
Here
the
we
banks.
go, yeah.
But it's not, if you look at what Ritchie, and by the way, I'm aware, I keep on talking about this in reference to Guy Ritchie films. There is no other way in which to talk about this film than in reference to Guy Ritchie films. But you have this idea that, you've got the card sharps in Lock, Stock who suddenly find themselves owing this unpayable debt to the terrible criminal syndicate. Or in Snatch, you have Jason Statham's character being dragged under, again, in the thrall of terrible gangsters.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. The structure isn't there, the style isn't there.
Well, he did. Ritchie definitely just developed a style that you say can only be described as the Guy Ritchie style. So there we go. Well, you definitely